We're good to go? I guess so. Yes, we see everything. All right. So, hello everyone. I'm happy to be here today for, I think, my second time for Educators Summit with the Fab Lab. And yeah, really exciting. I feel it was, I've been here since the beginning of the summit and been really interesting subjects. And I've seen also other subjects around AI, and I hope to bring another perspective here in this what we'll see as an introduction to a little bit longer training. I'm trying to reduce it for the time we have today, but I'll explain to you a bit where we can go further in the this training. So just to present you my organization I work for. So Digital Moment, our vision is to be a global leader in mobilizing communities to build a better future through digital education. So we have multiple initiatives. One of them is one I'm mainly part of, which is just formal education. So as I'm doing today, our role is to give trainings to other teachers to create, to help them bring digital literacy to their classroom. So we, of course, will address AI, which is the main topic of today, but we also do stuff with microbits, with Scratch, and other technologies. And we have other initiatives that try to aim in helping our community in different ways, but I won't go too deep. For now, we're in education mode. So this training, as I said, can take a lot longer. The foundation of AI is really broad. We're trying here just to bring you a good sense of what the training looks like, what you can bring into your classroom with just this little time we have. And I just want to make you know that this training was built in collaboration with the Raspberry Pi Foundation and the DeepMind organization who helped us just create this training because they have also developed a tool which I'll present probably at the end called Experience AI, which is a online platform that gives resources and activities to teachers to bring AI into their classroom in a safe and practical way. I'll have some question. I want to hear some discussion. I want to have your opinions on some subject and also your perspective as educators. Like, how do you think your students will engage in certain of the question we want to bring with them? So I'll be looking into the chat. I'm having also support for that. And also, if you can, I think James, if you can get a little screenshot at some point in the presentation at any moment, my colleagues in my organization will love it just to be able to share it on our social medias. Good. All right. So in today's session, I'm trying to go through three different subjects that will build up for our understanding of how AI should be, a main understanding of AI, and especially how to understand AI in education, how students can be safely presented to this new technology. So we'll start with the fundamentals, just trying to have a definition that is pretty clear. Then we'll try to address some challenges. How do we especially address those challenges with the classroom? And finally, we'll see how can this tool can be used in the classroom in different ways, uh, as much as the teachers using it, the students using it. So we'll get to that at some point. So let's start with our fundamentals. This is, I think, as also I didn't say, I have background in teaching and computer science and teaching math. So especially definitions for me are really important. And I think for AI especially too, this is not a new technology. If we talk about AI in the way I'll describe it, what we have, of course, a new technology that has been really more present in our society right now that's kind of taken the new AI definition, but we'll see there's a little difference here between the old version of AI and now the new version, which is a lot more talked about. So, what is AI? We'll try to define it. As I just said, we'll try to construct from this. I think as an educator, it's important, of course, for us to understand it well, to be able to teach it, and just being confident and comfortable into teaching these new subjects with our students. So It's an answer. It's a question here. I want you to be able to answer that. What is your understanding of AI? Would love also just any time in the discussion, if you have any question, don't hesitate to ask. I planned this presentation to be sure I have time to stop and having some question. I know I'm trying to plan all the question at the end, but don't hesitate if you have any question during this presentation, just ask them away. So here I'm showing you just a couple definition that were brought by different organization here. So as we can see, still today, AI is something that is being redefined in different ways, and we want to understand what's here the commons, the points that are in common in all those definitions. And the point is that we are trying to simulate human intelligence. That's been doing since at least the 1950s. That's how we've created machine to be able to replace some of the action done by human so that we can have time to do something else and they will help us being more efficient. So this is what, even though we have different ways of defining it, I think this is the main point we have to understand. So what I want to present here, as I said, since 1950, AI has been a term that has been used in different ways, but today in the last years, we've seen a new definition that has been introduced with AI that brought it in a more, I would say, complex way. And here we have two different um, way of using AI, so of developing, I would say, the systems. So we have a rule-based system and a data-driven system. So rule-based, as you'll probably guess, it's been there for a lot more time. Everything that is coding related is probably rule-based, and the data-driven is more related to the more recent systems, which are, of course, driven, as it says, by data, so mass amounts of data that are being analyzed. I've just been with the presentation of MindX, which was really interesting and showing how we can create our own AI with just by having a lot of data that has been recorded and then training some intelligence. So without having to do any codes, which would be here are rules, we can create some automation that is, of course, simulating our intelligent mind. So let me just take some water. If there's any question, I don't think I saw anyone for now. But okay, here I want you to participate a little bit, and I would love to hear you out. These would be, I think, a good way to also just here think about it together, but also with students. So here we have some situations, some examples of where AI can be used, but course, we're trying to define what's the difference between rule-based and data-driven. And for the first question, well, the first, not question, but the first situation of a spreadsheet that uses formulas to work out the total cost of a holiday. Do you think we should have a rule-based AI or a data-driven AI to answer this problem? How can I? Trying to see if I can see the chat from my place. All right. Here. Rules. Let's see how many people we have too. So thank you for answering. I'm also a French speaker, if you maybe noticed yet, but sometimes I try to switch by accident, but no worries. So yeah, rules. Yeah, this one seems pretty clear. We're talking about a rule-based AI. We have Excel, for example, that's going to be just having a bunch of formulas. So if we don't give numbers, of course, the formulas won't work. It cannot really interpret. If we give them numbers in letters, for examples, it won't work. So it has those limits of like, you have to abide by the rules of the system to make it work. So after this, we have an online service, online streaming service that recommends films based on users' viewing habits. Again, What do you think? Or is this rule-based? Is this data-driven? All AI, but different type of AI. So we have data. Don't hesitate if you want to also give it some explanation. I would love to hear what you think. Also, what do you think your students would answer? How do you think they would see it? The point of this little exercise is to make you think, how can I create this different definition? So data, data. All right. So that's it. So everybody seems to be saying data, but online streaming services have been existing for quite some times, and the new AI made by data-driven systems hasn't been existing as long as online streaming services has been existing. I think now, more in the recent years, online streaming services have been using, of course, just data driven by using just all the different movies someone has watched, but there's also a way of doing it by a rule base. So it would be, of course, less representative, or it would make recommendation that are less precise than a rule base. For example, if we just have a rules that says if this watchers just counting the number of type of movies he's watching. So if he says, if we can see that horror movie is the most viewed movie by this person, well, we'll recommend more horror movies. But what data driven would give me just a lot more information on not just the category of the movie, but which actors, what's the, well, how much I mean, or just where the movie is done, just a lot more information that can be packed, and then being able to give some recommendation that are a lot more precise um, for the users. And now for my last one, customer service chatbot that tries to solve common problems that customer usually have. What do you think? Okay, I like this data with rules. Yes, that's interesting. I haven't said anything about combining them yet, but if you take and just think about it, just think of how your students react to this kind of things, and even try to think of other examples that can be given. Yeah, combination. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think I also agree. I think they are not two systems that work apart. These two systems can, of course, follow, they can combine themselves together to have different way of solving problems. And for example, we can see chatbots have been existing for a lot more time than generative AI has been here. So again, it was probably before the chatbots were really simple, answering just you only click through some options, but pretty soon you would have to just talk with just somebody, so it would just refer you to an agent. So before chatbots were a lot more rule-based. Now we have some more and more complex chatbots which are able to keep the conversations, helping customers in different ways. And we can think about, of course, some things like ChatGPT, who are able to have just really long conversation. They don't ever have to need to refer you to an agent or someone. And of course, chatbot are this weird, well, not weird, but this can be this merging of these two technologies together to help just, of course, simplifying the customer service of any company. All right, so let's keep going. Ooh, not the right place. So just to go back on what we were saying, if it wasn't clear yet, so we have the rule base. For example, we have just this sheet of paper here who's able to just give us the indication of how to play a game of tic-tac-toe. But of course, as soon as we're doing something else than a game of tic-tac-toe, as soon we're giving other than numbers in a spreadsheet, it won't be able to do exactly what we want. Right? It will be stuck. It will be just constrained by the rules that we've given into it. But when we go into data-driven system, we have access to a lot more quantity of data and a lot of more, of course, options. We go, of course, I don't want to go too deep in data driven. I'm not an AI expert. And we can see there's a lot of different models that can be used. For example, with Minex, they were using something like just a collection of data and trying just to do a decision tree based on the amount of data it would be received. So just a statistical answer of what's the probability they're leaning left or leaning right, depending on the image that it was showing. But here, of course, there's a lot of different models and that are still being created right now. So and what's the most important thing to understand with what this data-driven system brings is this machine learning. So machine learning refers to the way that we build artificial intelligence using statistics instead of writing rules on a program. So this data-driven is where in the same way a human being would receive a lot of information throughout his life and would build learning through all this knowledge. Of course, a bit more complex than this, but this is how it's represented here with our new AI systems, which are able to gather all this information and create statistical prediction around it. In the same way, most AI and most tools you'll see that are able to represent how AI training works. You'll always see um, um, a statistical answer on how the probability of what it's analyzing is corresponding to what it should be. So in the same way, when she was supposed to detect when someone was leaning left or leaning right, well, it will give a probability of, okay, by the image I'm looking, I'm 95% sure he is leaning left. So of course it's always statistical, and that's why, of course, it brings up also a lot of challenge because statistics isn't something that necessarily understood by students in the early age, but of course it's something it's important to present to them. So statistic, prediction, two main words that has to be associated with this machine learning in the same way. We kind of do statistic in the same way. So this gives us also some challenges that we see also in humans doing statistic and trying to predict stuff. We'll see the same kind of challenges, but there's of course a little difference with the machines that don't have, of course, they don't have intent in the same way that humans have. So if there isn't any questions, let's jump on our next section, which is our challenges. So here the point, now that with your students you have a certain understanding, just a clear definition together uh, on what AI is and what, of course, what new AI has been built on. It's important, of course, to address some challenges and, of course, how to address those challenges to find ways to solve them, because as science has always wanted to be, just trying to solve problems. This is also a way here through our understanding of AI, how can we make it better? Because what's important here, and I'll say it again a lot during this part, is that it's still a tool that we are able to use as human, and it's not something that is able to act on its own. So our first question, I think, is really interesting. I think to have this open discussion with your students in your classroom is what happens when we treat AI as people. I'm sure here you can have some stories in mind about what happens when people develop relationships with some chatbots or some AI on the internet. We've heard some really I've heard a lot of stories, I would say. I won't go into the details, but I'm sure you all have some. And here we will try to think about what happens, and of course try to predict well what could happen, and also, of course, how do we prevent this? How do we make sure we don't treat them as people, and why shouldn't we treat them as people? So treating AI as people can be referred to the word anthropomorphize, which as far as is to show or treat animal or objects as human appearance, character, behavior. We have an image here, which I've been represented AI in a lot of ways in social media and in the internet in general as this kind of human being robot able to talk and answer and doing actions for you. And this kind of reinforces, especially for young people, this idea of this AI who's able to have his own agency. So, what's the risk? Why would we want to avoid this? There's, of course, many reasons. As I said, just you can think about some stories you've heard, but also just here are the main, I think, dangers that can be related to this that I already mentioned. So of course, it can distract the students from just trying to understand how it works, because if it's doing it on its own, why should I care about how it works? And then it can also have, if, as I said, as humans, we tend to do statistics. We also include sometimes our own biases in our statistical studies. So of course, AI will include biases in certain ways. We'll see this in the other section. And of course, it can create inequalities. And same as this distracting the students from their understanding of AI, it will also just remove their desires of understanding it in the way that they don't feel like they are active in the role when interacting with AI. Just this system that is too complex to understand and seems to be doing some magical stuff, and kind of stop them from trying to understand in a deeper level how they work. They're just looking at what's the input, what's the output, and they're trying to see where can they understand or influence what's going between those two moments. So for example, if we want to avoid the anthropomorphization of AI, there's multiple ways. I think these can be just shown just in the as something that can stay in the classroom in some places, just to us may just remember us of okay, remind us, I mean, of just how we should describe AI in certain ways. So of course, this is a machine, so we should refer it as a machine, not as a person who can just action. It doesn't learn, even though this is the way we see it described everywhere. Even me, sometimes I'm gonna use those words, and we're trying to just make sure ourselves to be careful of how we describe them, especially to students, because of course, as a teacher, our way of describing some concepts to our student will really influence a lot their way of course, understanding in their own way. So by using the right words, and AI, I think, is should be seen as a scientific discipline, which has been for a while. As I said, since 1950s at least, as soon as we create some machines, the way we were thought about AI, if we think about machine learning, this brings a new discipline, I think, in our scientific knowledge. I see the words have meaning. Yes, exactly. So the words you use in your classroom is really important. And here's just a little introduction of how you can think about using them. And of course, there's a lot more than this, but this is just a little sneak peek. So let's continue. Now we have to talk about biases, because I said this is based on um, a statistical system. So if us human have our own biases when we're doing statistics, well, of course, AI will be not apart from that. So what is the difference? In AI, the way biases is viewed is just the output of this model that is not neutral. I'm sure we can just change some of that word to apply to how a human would do it, but instead it will give references to some things and deprioritize or exclude others. So here we have two types of biases. I think AI is a really interesting tool to address one of the many biases that exist. I think they are a really interesting way of studying biases, and these are just two types of biases that you can introduce in your classroom, but there is really many more. There's even AI that are built to address some biases in particular. I don't have it on the top of my mind, but by doing some research, there is really AI that are focused. Well, the I would say the conversational AI are made to present their biases and just have some more detailed information that will help you to define what biases are appearing in their system and of course their output. So here, two different biases, data versus societal. Societal has been existing for as long as humans have been existing, and data is this new, of course, biases which has been created with, of course, our data-driven AI, because it's not, and these things are kind of related in some ways, because where does the data come from? Well, of course, from our society, but you'll see that, of course, a difference we can present because we decide what data is given to an AI, but societal bias are still existing. We're still trying to figure them out. It's a work in progress. So, a little engagement from you. I'm gonna ask you, well, I'm just have this image right now. So this image was created by this prompt, which was create an image of firefighter that were putting out a fire on a barn. So I'm sure you can find some irregularities. Of course, this image is not perfect. I'm sure some AIs would create probably now, I don't know when this image was created, but there's probably new AIs better at doing this kind of stuff right now, but we can still trying to study what kind of biases here appears in my image. So I would love to hear some examples. What do you think? What kind of irregularities are appearing here? And also try to think about, is it more applied to data biases or societal biases? So you can name something and define it. I'll give you some times. And I think this is also an activity that can be done with students. We create images and we think with them what what biases can be seen. James, exactly. We see that all firefighters are men. This is all pretty often the first one that is being noticed. And I think the most apparent, you'll have light skin, Caucasian. You don't have to worry too much about the water not even being sprayed on the fire, but still, yeah, you. So we've mentioned two of the, I think, most important one. They're all happy. I thank you. I hope I was hoping someone was gonna say that because, well, something in fire usually doesn't bring happiness to a lot of people. Well, I guess they are fixing the fire right now. They're stopping it, so I guess they would be happy about the fireman being there. But it is true that it's something a bit weird that can be thought about. Okay, maybe because they are, like it says, heroes at work, as it was a great thing, they are doing a great job, so everybody is happy for them. But firefighters are working with a team. Yeah, firefighters are usually serious. It's true. All right, so exactly the one I wanted to bring in front was also that they're all males, and of course, as someone said, it only happen in old barns. Exactly, yes. The old, and this barn seems to be almost crumbling down with all the cracks. So here we would think, I think it's a question we can discuss with our students. Is it data? Is it societal? Here, I would say it is societal in a ways that there is just more men generally in firefighters. There is, of course, women that are works in the fire as firefighters, but as we just know, as a society, there's just more men. So of course, it's not that data that was given that was just focused on men. It's just representing something our society has created. But of course, it depends. If we look at different things, and why is there a Dalmatian dog? Is it, what kind of biases does this bring? Is it because all the image of firefighters that was given to the AI had a dog in it? Is it, that could be a data biases, for example. If you just show some types of image to the AI, that's how he will train himself. So, all right, that was a good example. I'm just looking at, yeah, nothing seems to be, they don't seem to be trying to stopping this fire. So And then, of course, you could do this with a lot of different images in different ways. But at the end, what's the point is, well, to show how do we reduce those biases, how in the same way humans do. There is, of course, something that can be done to reduce the biases of the AI, of the data biases. So, for example, using diverse data. So we want to have large data set that we make sure that are representative in the same way. Any statistical study, one of the criteria that is really important is to make sure the statistics we have gathered are representative of the population we're studying. Exactly, yeah. Creating their own image, that's also a very interesting idea. So we can also try to split data for their testing. So we don't test on the trained data. So we have a set of data that has been sent to the AI so that it can train, but then there's another part of data that we don't show to the AI that can be then used to test how the AI was trained. And finally, we want to design with diversity. This can be applied in, of course, so many ways. But of course, with AI also, where we want to make sure we involve different backgrounds, experiences, and opinions to make sure our AI is really diverse in the data that has been given. All right. So this is it for the challenges. Now we get to our final section, AI in our classroom. How can we bring this? As you can see, we can engage through those kind of just early. Oh, someone I think shared an image of similarly to what I've done. It seems like a really more well done image. Oh, thank you, James. That's really interesting. And so yeah, now that we've in certain ways you can introduce the AI definitions and engage discussion with your students, but as a teacher, I know that would just be some kind of introduction. But of course, they to make sure they understand, they have to be active in their understanding. So we have to create some activities. How can we have some really engaging learning experience for our students? This is I'm gonna here, of course, try to propose. I think the objective here is to show you what can be done. Of course, this is to bring you ideas in our full training. We go through other ideas, we go deeper of some of the ideas. We also encourage you to create some of them during the training, but for today I'm just gonna be presenting some of them, and we're trying to think them as a quality of practice of how can AI help in different parts of the education, because of course we have the relation between the knowledge and the students, which is his learning experience. We have the knowledge and the teacher, which is the more the didactical approach, and of course the teacher and students, which is the pedagogical approach. AI can be applied in all of those different spheres, and of course in a really different way. So quality of practice in general, I think that's how AI has been presented. It can help us save time, differentiate instruction, enhance lessons, creating feedback. But as I said, I'm not an AI expert. I'm especially not an AI expert in education. We're trying here to just give you general ideas. There's no perfect rules right now of how to use it. Differentiation, instruction, they will all bring different difficulties, but also help you. It's not something that is perfect. So here are just some examples of how maybe you could use AI, but the point is to figure out what, of course, you need, and of course, is how to verify what the AI will be able to give you and what you want. There's AI tools for all these different types of problems that can be helpful. I'm not here to sell all the tools that existed. I just know there is a lot of existing. It's still something that you need to take time and a serious way to understand how can AI help me in this. But this is more about how the teacher uses it. Of course, now let's think about how we can help our students. So, for example, here's a little example of something that some schools have already implemented in their own school, and that we're just presenting pretty simply today as a spotlight model. So, for example, you have three lights, red as of course, in the same way, unless you live in a country where you don't have those lights, I'm pretty sure it's universal. But our red light, where you stop, so no collaboration with AI is permitted. Our yellow light, which is more requiring to permission of the educator, so it would be depending on what the objective of the student is. And finally, AI use is encouraged. So we really want to create a project that will engage them in using it. So here are some examples. And of course, they will be different for the age group the students are. For example, if we look at elementary K5, if we are in language arts, well, for example, when we want them to write original stories, well, we don't want them to use AI. Of course, we want them to use the original creative process to create stories. But if we're looking at using AI to proofreading and grammar check, AI can be helpful in a certain way. It can just give them just a little help that sometimes the teacher has to take time to review with them, while the AI here can give some suggestion on their writings. And finally, green light. But of course, creating stories can also be helpful. Well, the generations of the generating story prompts with the AI, you can also have it in a different way where instead of using your creativity, you're gonna have just a bunch of ideas come out of the AI, and then from some of these ideas, try to come up with your stories of your own. Or just help you to create just a broader story that with a lot more characters and a lot more things that in just the time constraint you have, you wouldn't have time to create all those, but this AI can then support you. No, no, we have some question. I think I'll wait to the end. I'm almost done. So how much time do I have left, James? I think 15 minutes.
Uh, you have 5 minutes left now.
5 minutes left. Okay, that's less than I thought. But as I said, I think I'm almost done. I think yeah, the yeah, I think I'm good. So the last thing I wanted to present is something that has been created by one of my colleagues, which is about co-constructing expectation with AI use in your classroom. And of course, why would you want to co-create expectations? Well, I've shown the little spotlight model, but this can also be a a policy that is creating with them. And of course, there's many reasons because it will help them create agencies with the policy. It will create unity, buy-ins, and accountability. If the students are involved in the creation of the policy of how we're going to use AI in your classroom, well, they'll feel more engaged with it. So, for example, I don't have time today, but we've created this little website project where they kind of have to do some research on what the use of AI should be, and then they kind of develop their own 10 rules of how AI would be used in your classroom. And finally, they finished by presenting those rules, and there's kind of a voting system in your classroom that can decide which are going to be the 10 rules that are going to be applied to the classroom. And they create this little website with it. So takeaways in general, I think AI has a lot to bring us, but there's also a lot of risk related to it. And what we want to help you as an organization is just help teachers to feel more comfortable, to bring in their classroom with really concrete and practical activities to have with their students. For example, we've talked about microbits in our first presentation with John, and I think there's a very interesting new technology that have been created with microbits last year, which is called Create AI, which helps you to create your own AI by having um, data just has been recorded by the microbit. So without any coding, you can create your own AI on a microbit. It's really interesting. We also have trainings on this. I think, yeah, that's what I'm talking about here. My last one, we have some, oh no, I didn't mention it, but yeah, we will also do some training on Create AI. How do you use this with microbits? We have, as I said, a lot others initiatives. I talked a little bit fast about Experience AI, Experience Yes. These are both platforms that help you bringing technologies in your classroom in a safe way, especially for Experience AI. If you haven't heard of it anyway, I really recommend it. Thank you for sharing the Create AI, James. I see you've heard about it too. So Yeah, I think I'll finish with this, and I think I have one more slide because as an organization, we're a nonprofit organization, I would really love that you give us your feedbacks on this short version of the training today. I can share the link on the chat right here. So if you have some times during the day, it doesn't have to be right now, but give us a little feedback on the I shared the slide last time, so I'm pretty sure I'll be able to do it too. But yes, if you have time to fill our little surveys, just give us a little feedback on this presentation I've just done. It would be very appreciated. Help us fund our organization. And what happened is your prompt. So good question. What happens if you prompt the AI to eliminate biases? I think something you should experiment yourself. I think sometimes it will, of course, be more careful on not showing his biases. Doesn't mean he doesn't have it anymore. It will maybe try to hide it in another way. So it depends on really on what biases you're talking about also. So it depends. But it's a good question. I think it's interesting to explore. All right. It's been a pleasure. Hope got you interested. If you want to reach out, if you're interested in our trainings, we do it across Canada, but we mainly work with Canadian educators, but there's always possibility for also international help. We have open sessions, we have a lot of things.